I have never talked about this. And now I'm old and I'm at the end of my life. I wonder who'll remember us. What we did. We loved our country. There were people that didn't love us, but we loved our country. I was born in St. Andrews in 1941, and I lived in Scotland until I was 20. And when I was born, the class system was still very much part of life. I knew I didn't have a future. I mean, I didn't mind being a waiter in the fanciest hotel in Edinburgh. I made great tips. I just knew that I wanted more and I couldn't get it in Scotland. Where America was, you can be what you want to be. I must have been 21 at least when I went to Canada. I left and immigrated to Canada. To come to America, you have to have a sponsor. So I came down from Toronto to Buffalo, New York, and applied to go in the military. Got down and I applied to go in the Army. And the Army said, I took the test and I didn't pass the test to go in the Army, but they said, well, go down the hall, the Navy is down the hall. So I went down and the Navy said, sure, we'll take you. So I got orders to the recruit depot in Great Lakes and graduated from boot camp in Great Lakes, 1965. After boot camp, I received orders to Moffett Field, California. And then I wasn't there but 6 months and I got orders to Kodiak, Alaska. So I went to Kodiak, Alaska, but I got injured and I went to the hospital. And the senior chief there said, would you like to work here? So I worked as a striker in the hospital, in all the departments, helped in surgery, worked in the ER. And then eventually I said, I'd like to go to the bloody school. Well, they sent me to the school eventually. And I went to the hospital corps school at Naval Hospital Balboa, San Diego. There was a Marine Corps detachment on Kodiak Island. And it was there that I learned that the corpsmen went with the Marines. And I had no idea that the medical personnel who served with the Marines in Vietnam were Navy hospital corpsmen. So it was on Kodiak that I learned that I might eventually end up with the Marine Corps. And then I got orders to go to field medical school, which is at Camp Pendleton. Off came the Navy uniform and on came the Marine Corps uniform. And you didn't go to Marine boot camp, but by God, you're a Marine now. After field medical school, I returned to the Naval Hospital in San Diego. I knew I was going to get orders to a battalion in Vietnam. I did not know which until the orders came. And the orders were to assign me to the 3rd Battalion, 26 Marines in Vietnam. So I left continental United States in March in 1967 and landed in Da Nang. The next day, I had to go to Phu Bai because the battalion was in Phu Bai. So I was assigned to my company, 3rd Platoon. From Phu Bai, the battalion was moved up to Khe Sanh. Khe Sanh was a forward base, and we ran patrols on Hill 881 and 861, always on the hills, 881 and 861, looking for Charlie. Looking. My sole focus in Vietnam was not to kill people. I had a solemn duty to bring those boys home. That was my duty. No one will die. But of course they did. And you live with that. You can't bring everybody home. And I think that's what being a corpsman is about. And you become more than the corpsman. Often Times you become the priest, the confessor. You pray with them. You write letters home for them. And you know that you're terrified. But these other folks who rely on you, you have to be strong for them. And you have to be a bit of a bully. You have to be, have you got the right water? Did you take your water pill? Did you take your salt pill? Did you change your socks? And you have to knock them on the side of the helmet and tell them, what's wrong with you? Get this shit done. Because they become like your children. I think my time at Quezon was the months that I became a true Marine. There's a camaraderie that exists when you know that tomorrow you might not make it. We ran patrols out of Quezon forever, and it wasn't until September we moved to Contien. Contien was it's land of the angels. There was a farmhouse and a churchyard. There was a churchyard too. We were to relieve the 9th Marines, the Walking Dead. We all loaded on helicopters and went part way, and then we got some truck convoy and we moved up into the same area that the 9th Marines were leaving.
Those Marines are talking about a place named Con Thien, an obscure American outpost in Vietnam, as Tarawa, Iwo Jima, and Guadalcanal were once obscure. Con Thien is a bitterly exposed target just 2 miles below the DMZ.
I remember more the second day than I remember the first day, but the first day we had been hit by North Vietnamese, and it was a battalion-size North Vietnamese maneuver, and we got hit badly, and they ran right through us, and we were at the churchyard. Now, it started in the morning, so the fighting went on during the day, and we were getting beaten. They ran right through us, which was what saved us. And we had so many wounded, so many wounded. I remember that night where we gathered up the wounded. We were running low on ammunition, and the helicopters started to come in. We had so many wounded. We got everybody on, and we survived that night. On the 10th of September, we were to move on a battalion movement. The Vietnamese hit us with a regiment. They hit us first with artillery. I had wounded everywhere. And people crying out. When between the barrages, I'd get the wounded and bring them and put them in this hole and put battle dressings on, make them comfortable. There was no way you were going to get anybody out of there. And then some rounds landed in the hole where I was treating the wounded. And shrapnel filled the right side of my head. Blew off my helmet, and my face swelled, and I still kept working. In the end, I couldn't stand. I couldn't see. I was medevac to the Naval Support Activity at NSA Da Nang. I had surgery, debrided the wounds on the right side of my head. They took all the shrapnel out that they could. And I was placed on a ventilator. And he said, "Scotty, I'm going to send you home." And I was put on an Air Force medevac flight. And I went back to San Diego, to the Naval Hospital of San Diego. And in a surgery ward I used to work on, I was admitted to the same damn ward. I should have died. I spent a year in the hospital. My left side was paralyzed for a long time. I have no peripheral vision on the left side, and I have a seizure disorder secondary to my head wound. I have a titanium plate in my head, and I went back to duty. What else was I gonna do? And then I had seizures, and then I couldn't stay. So they made me leave. So I was retired in November of 1970. The Navy has been good to me, even though I wasn't really in the Navy, I think. But they've been good to me. The military's been good to me. I was working for a large medical group in San Diego, and her mother, my wife, Debbie, who I've been married to for 45 plus years, her mother worked in the lab. Debbie's mother said, well, you should take my daughter out. And I said, absolutely not. I'm just gonna date. So I took her out for a date after that. And she had a little redheaded daughter. And the rest was history. I've been blessed with 2 grandchildren and a wonderful wife and daughter and son-in-law. What means more to me than anything is to say that I was company corpsman with Mike Company, 3rd Battalion, 26 Marines. The things that we do in combat, we don't do for ourselves. We do for each other. You do it for the man on the right and the man on the left. Because you've discovered very quickly that death comes before the medals do. It's not a game. It's not a video. It's the reality of young men going to do old men's bidding.
All right, you might take Documentaries.
War wasn't fought really for the flag or for apple pie or mom. It was protecting your buddy to the left and the right and watching the 6 of the guy in front of you. And I was proud to serve with him. Born March 7, 1946. Grew up in Japan, came back, graduated in 1964, Salina, Kansas. Went on to Kansas State Teachers College, and from there enlisted in the Navy. Even in college, Vietnam was on the news every night, and I was raised in a military family, and realized that the war was going on. I put college behind me and enlisted. 1966, and had no idea I was going to end up as a corpsman. They test you, when you go to boot camp for your MOS or, what your job description is going to be. And I had worked in a hospital, as an orderly. As a teenager, they decided I'd make a good corpsman, and they needed corpsmen pretty bad. Boot camp. San Diego Naval Training Center, and following boot camp, went to Corps School, Balboa Naval Hospital. Became a corpsman, and then on to Marine Brainwashing School called FMF, Training for Corpsmen, Camp Pendleton, where we threw grenades and pretended like we were Marines. And I married my high school sweetheart, Mary Ann. January 15, 1966. So 1967, I finished all my training, got a 30-day leave, and off to Vietnam. Flew into Da Nang and was mustered into the 1st Marine Regiment that was based in Da Nang. The operations in Da Nang were search and destroy. It was pretty much, we were fighting the VC there. There was no uniformed NVA. And so it was a war of booby traps and ambushes, and they would hit and run. And we'd just walk around in the jungle looking for them. I operated in the I Corps area, Da Nang, up until we moved to Phu Bai just before Tet, 1968.
The Viet Cong simultaneously attacked just about every major city and town in South Vietnam. In one day, they increased the scope of the war dramatically.
Tet, 1968, January 31, Lunar New Year celebration for Vietnam. The North Vietnamese pretty much attacked all of Vietnam, from Saigon in the south to the I Corps area where I was. And I asked the Sergeant Major at the time when he woke us up, that day, what's the deal going to this, up the road to a place called Hue? He said, oh, we'll be back by lunch. It's no big deal. We're just going to help the Army out at the MAC-V compound.
At Hue, the old imperial capital, 400 miles to the north, the Viet Cong is holding on to part of the town, as well as half the city of Kon Tum in the central highlands. Along the northern...
I was tasked with going with that 1st company to set up a triage and treatment center at the MAC-V compound. When I got there, it was just chaos. There was at least 40 or plus wounded. They thought we were there to rescue them. We were a company of, there's probably 160 Marines, and at the time, we didn't realize that over 10,000 NVA had snuck in from the highlands. And Hue was the imperial city, the cultural center of South Vietnam. And Hue was a big deal to North Vietnam.
How are we doing on round?
I remember hearing a radio communication back to Phu Bai to our regimental commander that we are outmanned and outgunned. And what followed was 24 days of intense fighting, never let up. One of the bloodiest battles of the Vietnam War. I think it was 215 killed, on our side, and over 1,500 wounded. I would go from the MAC-V compound where I set up a triage and a surgical unit with our regimental corpsman, Dr. James Beck, and I'd go out and help bring wounded back to the MAC-V compound. In Hue, it was uniformed, trained North Vietnamese Army, and it was a culture shock to us. Out of the jungle into an urban environment, we had no training, no clue, and it was a scary, scary time. I was awarded the Silver Star and Purple Heart. I was tending to a Marine, had a chest wound, had bandaged him up and heard a click, turned around, and here's a uniformed NVA with a P-40 like a bazooka on his shoulder. And I heard the click of him getting ready to fire. I have to be honest with you, I was more shocked at the sight of a uniformed enemy than I was to that rocket he had on his shoulder. But I threw myself on the Marine, he shot the rocket, missed us, hit the wall, and of course shrapnel everywhere. So I jumped up, he was reloading, I had my .45, and I always thought I was a pretty good shot with the pistol. I think I emptied my .45, and it was the next to the last round that finally got him. And when I was standing over that guy, I thought I'd pissed my pants. And what had happened is my boots filled with blood, you know, from all the shrapnel, you know, on my back and legs. I carried that Marine back to a mule and drove back to the MAC-V compound. And Dr. Back took out big pieces of shrapnel that he could find and patched me up, and I never left. You know, it's an old adage that I walked beside heroes, but I wasn't one. And there's truth to that. I don't know how many, there was at least 3 or 4 Medal of Honors, and I don't know how many Navy Crosses and Silver Stars, and, you know, from the guys that fought that battle. Way was a turning point in the history of our country, in that the debate on how do we win the war turned into how do we get out. After we took back the city, we being the Marines, our mission was to relieve the 26 Marines at Quezon. They lived underground. When we relieved them, I inherited an underground nest, you know, that I could sleep in, because we took rounds all the time. At Quezon, it was time for me to go on R&R and meet Marianne in Hawaii. During that ride, the tail gunner took his helmet off and was sitting on it. And I thought, you know, what the hell is he doing? And then I noticed these holes appearing in the floor of the Huey. So I took my helmet off immediately and sat on it. Anyway, we were shot down and landed in a river. You know, I went and checked the pilot and the co-pilot. The co-pilot was dead. The pilot was breathing, and as I put him back in his chair, he exsanguinated out of a neck wound. Found a SAR radio on the pilot's vest and turned it on, and it was less than 10 minutes. There was a Jolly Green Giant there to rescue us. And that was on my way to meet Marianne in Hawaii. Right after R&R, I came back to Da Nang and hooked back up at Quezon, and we left Quezon back to the Da Nang area and search and destroy missions. And I was in Da Nang for the rest of my tour. I came home towards the end of '68 and was assigned as a search and rescue corpsman at Lemoore Naval Air Station in California. Until December of '69, I got a 3-month early out to go to school. Serving my country was an obligation I felt. The honor of serving was because I worked with Marines. After I came back from Vietnam, Marianne and I, by that time, had been married a number of years and wanted kids and didn't have any. And while working at a Catholic hospital, St. Joseph in Wichita, Kansas, the nuns knew we wanted a kid, and they showed up one morning with a little 10-month-old little girl. And that's Angie, you know, our oldest child. During PA school, my wife had some indigestion problems, went to the doctor, and he told her she was pregnant. She told him, I can't be, because I can't get pregnant. And Sarah was conceived, our youngest. 2 daughters, 3 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and the blessings of a family. Today, I don't consider myself a sailor or a Marine. I'm a Fleet Marine Force corpsman, which is a brotherhood that I was privileged to have. Having my Marines accept me 100% into their brotherhood was the greatest honor I ever had.